Hey everyone, I'm Captain Ryan. Tonight, we're going to walk through one of the most tragic and puzzling events in recent aviation history, the crash of UPS Flight 2976, a McDonnell Douglas MD-11 freighter that went down just seconds after takeoff from Louisville, Kentucky, on November 4th, 2025. Before we get started, I'd like to ask you something. If you were sitting in that cockpit and your aircraft suddenly lost power at rotation, what would you do? Let me know your thoughts and theories in the comments. I always read them, and your perspective matters. Now let's analyze exactly what went wrong. The night was calm. Runway 17 right was dry and clear. The three-person crew, a captain, first officer, and loadmaster, were preparing for a routine overnight haul to Honolulu. The MD-11F, tail number N259 UP, was heavy, over 550,000 pounds at takeoff, carrying nearly 200,000 pounds of Jet A fuel and 200,000 pounds of cargo. For a pilot, that's an aircraft right on the edge of its performance envelope. Every checklist item has to be perfect. Every number, from V-speeds to trim, must line up. The engines spooled up smoothly. 3 General Electric CF6 8C2 turbofans, each producing 61,500 pounds of thrust. That's enough combined power to move a small city block. The acceleration felt normal. The cockpit instruments would have read steady torque, stable EGTs. Everything looked routine. Until rotation. Eyewitness videos later showed a flash from the left engine, that's engine number 1, followed by a streak of sparks near the tail engine. Within seconds, the left engine erupted in flames. Inside the cockpit, the crew would have felt an immediate yaw, the nose pulling sharply left. At that speed, you don't have much time. Below V1 you reject. Above V1 you go. At rotation speed, they had to fly. But as the aircraft lifted just a few feet off the runway, it started to roll. Let's pause here. When we talk about asymmetric thrust, the MD-11 isn't as forgiving as modern twins. With its long fuselage and relatively small wings, any loss of power on one side creates massive aerodynamic imbalance. You counter it with rudder, aileron, trim. But when you're heavy, low, and slow, that's asking the airplane to do more than physics will allow. Radar data shows Flight 2976 reached roughly 175 feet. That's less than a 6-story building, before descending again. The landing gear was still down, slats still extended. They were fighting for airspeed, not altitude. When an MD-11 loses an engine, especially the left one, there's also a risk to the hydraulic and electrical systems housed in that wing root. If those lines rupture, the leading edge slats can retract on that side. And when slats retract under aerodynamic load, stall speed jumps dramatically. That's what we think happened next. The left wing stall. Suddenly, lift collapses on one side. The aircraft rolls left, nose down. There's no altitude to recover. In the span of about 7 seconds, a 200-ton jet becomes uncontrollable. Then impact, just beyond the end of 17 right. The explosion lit up the Louisville skyline. Reports confirmed over 200,000 pounds of fuel ignited, engulfing nearby warehouses and vehicles. The blast was so intense it triggered a shelter-in-place order for the surrounding neighborhoods. No distress call was ever made. That tells us everything. The crew never had the time. When investigators reached the scene, they found something chilling. What appeared to be the entire left engine lying on the runway, separated from the wing. If that's verified, it points to one of the rarest and most feared failures in aviation: engine separation. The last time we saw that was American Airlines Flight 191 back in 1979, another McDonnell Douglas design, the DC-10. In that case, the left engine detached during takeoff from Chicago O'Hare, ripping through hydraulic lines and causing the leading-edge slats to retract. The aircraft rolled inverted and crashed 31 seconds later. 273 lives lost. Now, nearly half a century later, we may have seen history repeat itself. Let's talk engineering for a moment. The MD-11's #1 engine is mounted beneath the left wing on a pylon assembly that carries not just the engine weight, but hydraulic lines, fuel lines, and electrical harnesses. If that pylon fails, whether from fatigue, corrosion, or uncontained engine damage, it can shear away completely. In this case, preliminary photos show debris consistent with pylon separation. If true, the left wing lost not only thrust, but also critical control systems. That's a death sentence for a heavy jet at rotation speed. Could maintenance be a factor? Possibly. This airframe was built in 1991, 34 years old. While cargo aircraft are maintained to the same regulatory standards as passenger jets, they endure higher cycles of stress, heavier payloads, and often longer duty periods between overhauls. Every takeoff flexes the wings and pylons. After 3 decades, even a perfectly inspected bolt can reach its fatigue limit. Inside the cockpit, imagine what the crew experienced. At rotation, one engine explodes. The aircraft veers left. Alarms blare. Fire bell, master caution, stick shaker, the works. The captain's instinct is to keep flying. Maintain V2, pitch 12 to 14 degrees, counter with rudder. The first officer calls, positive rate, but before they can retract the gear, the lift vanishes. The horizon tilts, the left wing drops, and they're staring into darkness. Every pilot trains for engine out. No one trains for engine separation. When the NTSB arrived, they secured both recorders. The FDR, Flight Data Recorder, was partially recovered. The CVR, Cockpit Voice Recorder, suffered heat damage but contained usable segments. Investigators also collected engine mount fragments and maintenance logs from UPS's Louisville base. Early data suggested no fuel contamination or sabotage, just mechanical failure. The working theory: a catastrophic pylon fracture on the #1 engine, compounded by a secondary power loss on the tail engine. That dual event made the aircraft essentially unflyable within seconds. Let's compare this behavior to standard MD-11 performance. At maximum takeoff weight, rotation occurs around 160 mph, and climb rate should reach 2,000 feet per minute with all engines operating. With one engine out, you expect a reduced climb but still a positive rate. With 2 engines degraded, you're below minimum climb gradient. The airplane can't hold altitude. Now add asymmetric drag from a missing engine and uncontrolled slat movement, and you're not flying. You're falling with power. The post-impact fire was beyond anything local responders had seen in years. It took hours to extinguish. Parts of the fuselage were found embedded in warehouse walls. One engine, possibly #2, was recovered nearly 800 feet from the main crater. UPS suspended all MD-11 operations for 24 hours pending inspection. The FAA issued an emergency airworthiness directive requiring pylon attachment checks fleet-wide. For the aviation community, this was déjà vu, a 1970s-era design showing its age in the 2020s. So, could the crew have done anything differently? Honestly, not much. Once that pylon failed, their fate was sealed. There's simply no checklist for engine missing. even a perfect reaction. Maintain control, reduce power on the opposite side, pitch down, can't overcome structural asymmetry and hydraulic loss. From a pilot's perspective, they did everything right. Commit to flight, hold the controls steady, fight the roll. That's professionalism to the very end. When dawn broke over Louisville, the runway was closed, the fires finally out. 3 UPS uniforms lay folded in the operations center. Silent reminders of the people behind the call sign, UPS 2976. Across the network, flight crews paused before pushback. Some stood quietly in cockpits. Others bowed their heads in dispatch halls. For those who fly heavy metal at night, carrying the world's cargo while most people sleep, the loss hit close to home. We all know that every takeoff is a contract with gravity, one that has to be renewed every single flight. For investigators, the coming months will be about metallurgy, maintenance history, and flight data reconstruction. But for pilots, the takeaway is simpler and personal. It's a reminder that asymmetric thrust can be trained for, but structural failure can't be flown out of. Every inspection, every torque wrench, every maintenance sign-off is sacred. Those bolts under the wing, they carry more than metal. They carry lives. As for the MD-11 itself, it's a remarkable machine, but an unforgiving one. Many of us have said it feels like a race car on final approach. Fast, precise, but punishing if you're even slightly off. And yet, it served faithfully for decades, moving millions of tons of freight safely around the world. If this accident leads to stricter inspections or the eventual retirement of the MD-11 fleet, that will be its legacy, and the legacy of the 3 crew members who paid the ultimate price. So, what really brought down UPS 2976? A mechanical failure? Metal fatigue? Bad luck? Or the simple truth that even in 2025, flight is still a fragile balance between power, lift, and human judgment? I'd like to hear what you think. Leave your thoughts below. Let's talk about it, pilot to pilot, aviation fan to aviation fan. And if you've learned something from this breakdown, consider subscribing so we can keep these discussions alive, not for views, but for awareness. Because every accident analyzed is another flight made safer. I'm Captain Ryan. Stay safe, keep learning, and may every takeoff you make end with a smooth landing.